Lurking behind seemingly rosy narratives, domestic violence is a reality for many. So, how do we identify it, address it, and find solutions for it? Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Women Talk Season 3, where today we're going to be speaking a little bit about domestic violence. My name is Zoraya.
And I'm Deborah. And, you know, this is a topic that we've talked about on the show before, but it's because it's such an important one and one we feel the need to constantly address because domestic violence affects so many men and women, majority women, in Malaysia, around the world. And it's a very insidious thing. It kind of creeps in, it happens behind closed doors. It's surrounded with so much shame,
as well,
taboo, guilt. And it's also very confusing, right, to those victims who go through it. But we're very lucky. We've got two wonderful guests with us today who do amazing work working directly with women. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us.
We have Urmila Das, clinical psychologist. You've actually been on the show with us once before, so thank you for coming back again. And then Dr. Ng Mei Yi, Deputy President of AWAM, All Women's Action Society of Malaysia. So thank you both very much for joining us.
So in your experiences, could you help us maybe define what is domestic violence and a little bit about how it happens? Because it is kind of subtle. It doesn't start off in a very obvious way, right, Doctor?
Domestic violence is not just a physical matter, although this is what everybody believes it is to be, but it can also be psychological, emotional. It can also be financially abused, you see, and not to mention sexual abuse, that will be a prominent one, I would say, you see. And it all became started with the sense of liking to exert power on someone to show that, no, I have control over you. Or I would say in a layman understanding, it would be like expressing ego.
What about you?
Yes, I mean, I agree with her. I mean, domestic violence, a lot of people think it's physical, but it's financial, it's psychological, it's emotional, it's sexual. There's a lot of, other things going on below the surface that can have a terrible effect on the victim or survivor.
So when you've seen different clients, what would you say is the most common domestic violence issue?
I think it is also about wanting to control, as the doctor said, to have power, like in rape, they want to assert power. And also, it's not always in the lower socioeconomic status group. There are also a lot of, well-to-do people who experience this on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, it was like Zoraya, you were saying earlier, it happens to everybody.
Yes.
It doesn't discriminate. But there are links, I think, with poverty. Poverty can exacerbate it. It can sometimes be the aggressor because there are stresses that occur within the home. And it also I guess hinders women's ability to can I leave a marriage? Do they feel paralyzed?
Actually, most of the time, I mean, the clients that I've seen, yes, that's the right word, they feel paralyzed. They feel that they have no support out there. And, sometimes you get so used to your surroundings and environment that you don't want to make that change. It's scary to, to have that change.
Well, there was an interesting, I think, statistic. WHO actually says that globally, 1 in 3, that's 30% of women worldwide, have been either subjected to one form of violence.
Such a high number, actually.
It is.
And I mean, that's 1 in 3 people that we possibly know.
I mean, we all know someone.
People don't talk about it because I think there's so much shame around.
And that is reported numbers. What about those that is not reported and those who do not understand and do not know that that is a form of abuse?
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about trends in Malaysia? I mean, it's very hard to get the statistics for reasons you just mentioned. A lot of people don't report. What are our numbers rising, not rising, or are more reporting?
Actually, the numbers have risen, and it was quite glaring during the first half of the MCO, the Movement Control Order.
Exactly.
It went up to, I think, 3.4% or more. You know, a lot of articles written about it, you know, being in a cramped space, there's no escape, there's no deviation, and, you know, children around, it increased tremendously.
And that goes back to your earlier on statement that you say that there's a relationship between poverty and abuse. I doubt so. Poverty is one of the factors that aggravates the abuse, but there must be a underlying problem that actually forms the basis of it. That is why during the MCO we see that the number shoots up a lot, because it's not so much about not having money anyway, everybody's inside the home, but there's other things which is like stress, pressures and worries, what's happening out there, that actually cause a person to become aggressive.
How many years are we talking about that now we're seeing that there's a rise in domestic violence? And does this just have to do with that people are reporting it more now, or does this have to do that actually society as a whole, we've become more aggressive, or we are now in situations that are causing more domestic violence to happen?
I think it is all of the above, whatever you have said. More people are reporting and more people are actually trying to get help without leaving the situation. If they don't report it, we don't have the numbers. And in mental health, especially in my field, we can't report it, it's confidential, right? Unless they are in harm of death or sexual abuse, and then we need to report it. But the numbers have definitely gone up exponentially.
Interesting.
And also just quickly touching on you mentioned earlier, Urmila, about children, right? So I don't think any person who is a victim of domestic violence, and if they have kids, the kids play a huge role in how do I go to court? Do I leave the relationship? What do I do? Do I put the father in jail? He's still the father of my kids. That's always very tricky.
We always have this preconception that the abuser is the male of the family, but that is not 100% of the time. There will be situations where the parent or the mother is abusing the child, or even the elderly at home, you see. So it's not true that we only focus on the husband or the father of the family, you see. And if you're saying that the mother refused to leave the relationship because of the children and so on and so forth, that will depend on who is the abuser to begin with, right? And also we have to understand there's something Stockholm syndrome. And as women, we have love for our family, and we try not to break it as far as our body can sustain.
We'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back from the break.
Welcome back to Women Talk. We were just talking about in the break that it was actually only in 1994, and I'm not sure if you guys listening actually know this, that our government actually enacted the Domestic Violence Act, which actually criminalizes all forms of domestic violence. So if you did not know, now you know. But we have these ladies here with us today, and we want to jump right into the work that you guys are doing, because there are victims and all stages of domestic violence, right? In a state of trauma, coming out of trauma. Where do they go depending on the kinds of help that they need? Doctor?
I think the first stop that most women will go will be the police station, because that is the party that they know best. But given that not everybody has the courage to walk into the police station, and many will end up trying to look for help from friends and family. But right now we have NGOs and CSO like us who offer helpline to abuse the people who are being abused, who think that they're being abused. They can call us and we can guide them on what to do next. And if situation really dire and they need help, they can come to us physically, and we can escort them to the police stations and give them advice. We have consultation service from counselors and things like that. We even provide legal information to help them if they need it.
There's the emergency protection order issued by the Social Welfare Department, JKM, and that can be you can get that immediately.
Yes, you can apply for EPO and you can get it quite kind of immediately, relatively immediately, and it's valid for 7 days.
And what kind of protection does that even give you once you've...
It's kind of an order to stay away, the abuser to stay away while the
investigation begins.
Yeah. If you're talking about the police investigation, we apply for IPO. That will take a longer period of coverage. That means the protection is longer as long as the investigation is ongoing.
Urmila, I'm sure you've worked with many different clients. When it comes to listening to women and men about these things, what is the biggest impact that you see happening to them when it comes to domestic violence?
I think the psychological abuse or the impact on them is sometimes it takes years and years for them to start again or, get over it. No one really gets over it. So they need actually medication sometimes, depending on how long they have been abused. But a lot of women, they come in with other reasons, and then when they explain what's happening, they don't even know it's domestic violence because, nobody's beating them.
So what's an example?
Yeah, like for example, a husband saying, insulting his wife in front of all the kids and saying, get out of the house, and pushes her out of the house and teaches her a lesson by locking the door. And, she's begging to come in, or she just sits down outside. And I'm not talking just locals, expats as well. And it's quite frightening because they have no support here. A lot of them have no support here. They don't know what to do. And I'm not talking about the lower economic status, although that's more prevalent. These are people who are in the high average, economic status where there's power and control.
But then do you also find the opposite happening where maybe it's like a crying wolf situation where maybe it's not actually domestic violence, but people are just coming and, Yeah.
I mean, I do see some of them, but I would say not so many. Most of them actually don't even know they're being... there's violence against them because they don't think they have any marks or broken bones to show. Yeah.
I mean, it's quite a vague definition, right? Domestic violence, and we talked about it being psychological, physical, sexual, financial.
Yes, and also elder abuse. Yeah. I mean, it's still in the home,
It's still a form of domestic violence.
Yes, it's very, very rampant now, and I'm quite disheartened because not enough is being done. And I think we can get ahead of this if we have a lot of awareness, talks, what you ladies are doing today, advertisements, programs on it, just like how we did during COVID.
Yeah. I mean, there needs to be far more, we need to say normalize, but we need to normalize conversations on what domestic violence is, on who the perpetrators can be, but also who the victims are. But Doctor, you were saying you experienced something personally.
Yes. Domestic abuse as at home, like being verbally abused and sometimes physically beaten as a child, you see. You were right to say that the education, the information should go to both sides, the victim, the survivors, and also the abuser, to understand that the action that they have done is not right. And a lot of time, especially when people go to the police stations, if there is no physical injury, there's no physical impact, it's kind of this is a masalah keluarga, you see. And the third one that needs the education will be the authority, the enforcer, to understand that abuse does not necessarily means physical. Sometimes the mental abuse is far worse impact, because say for example a husband that verbally abused a wife all the time, and the wife will vent it on the children physically. You see, so it's like two layers of the process. You see, so if the wife goes to the police station and says that I'm being abused verbally, the case may not be taken seriously because there's no physical injury on the wife, but there is on the child. And the child couldn't. The child can't go to the police station.
I mean, I think it's exactly what you were saying about trauma. Is it doesn't just kind of end there; it lingers for a long time, and that
it's generational.
Exactly. And imagine where the child is going to bring this experience to the next generation.
Yes. Yeah, it's
we have to learn to cut it off as best we can. But we'll speak a little bit more about domestic violence and what we can do to stop it when we come back from the break. Welcome back to the episode where we are speaking about domestic violence, and we were just talking to Dr. over here about your own experience, but now I'd like to go over to you, Urmila, and you were saying during the break that you also had an experience.
Yes, actually, I'm saying this, you know, on camera because I think people need to come out and talk more and express, and it's not a shame. But in 2019, my parents were being abused.
Wow.
So when I intervened, it wasn't nice. It wasn't pleasant. I had to get the police in. There was a lot of verbal abuse. You know, and also I had just finished chemotherapy at that time. I wasn't all there. Wow. Thank God for my husband's support. If not, I don't think I could have done it. But I started having PTSD. I'd have revisiting the trauma that happened while I was talking to a patient. And I thought, this can't go on, because you need to be 100% on the ball when you're talking to someone. And so I had to see a psychiatrist. And of course, he empathized. Being man, he empathized, but he told me not to do anything and to let my parents be. But I had to get on medication for some time just to calm myself down. You know, so that's like my first-hand experience with that. Elder abuse, neglect. This is domestic violence. My mother was at 34 kilos. She was going to die in 2 days.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, severe, you know.
I mean, you had no choice.
Malnutrition and severely dehydrated in the 21st century.
It's unthinkable.
So, yeah, I made a big decision to say that today, and I hope it helps and it gets across to people that we need to speak up and get help.
A lot of people, they think that, oh, I need to stay for the sake of the children, or maybe it's not too bad. You know, maybe when the kids are older, I'll walk out. Or we let it go because we don't want to cause maybe more problems by unearthing the issue and trying to deal with it. But the long-term consequences are very devastating.
It is, it is. Let's be realistic. You anticipate a behavior might change, but it may not, you see. But what is more realistic is that if you walk out now and get help, you're helping yourself and your children immediately, and that is an immediate impact that you see.
How much emphasis do we put on actually dealing with the perpetrators themselves? Because they are also definitely going through something themselves.
Exactly. And that is a very valid point to say, is that the aggressor is aggressive, it is abusive, because there is some problem that he or she is facing herself, okay? It may be financial pressure or psychological or emotional pressure. That person needs help also. But in this society, we are very prone into focusing on the survivor, on the victim, and we're trying all our best to put all our resources to help the victim, assuming that the abuser is always a bad guy, a bad person. But nobody is born bad, you see. There must be something happening that he or she refused to reveal or doesn't know that she can't say it out, you see. I think that person needs help even more, you see. The injury or the abuse sustained by the victim is just an outcome of a cause. So we need to address the cause. So if we keep on addressing the victim, which is important, I don't deny is important, but we are actually solving the outcome of a source.
I mean, I think it comes back to what we were saying about the generational trauma that just gets passed on and passed on. If it doesn't get dealt with, then at some point you need to look at everybody in that line and go, okay, what's happening here?
But it's a great time now with mental health being something that
in the forefront
is a lot more in the forefront. Everyone's being able to talk about it more, to access it even more, and in schools, importantly, this is the time to be able to address it.
Psychoeducation is so important. If a child has seen his mother or father being abused, there's a 50% chance that child will become an abuser or be abused. So, you know, it has to be stopped. And we have to create more awareness. That's the only way. We can't go to each house, but we need to do it in such a way that everybody becomes more and more aware. Like during COVID, the suicide rates went up. There's so many, you know, helplines that were put up in every state. We need to do that for this.
And have better role models and better examples.
I mean, I think the fact is, everyone, whether you're the media, whether you're the news, whether you're the schools, education, everyone has a role to play. And of course, ladies like yourself, you're on the ground, you're doing the real work, facing victims and perpetrators as well. But Urmila, you were saying that you have contacts, right? So for those of you watching, if you know someone, there are actually a long list of agencies that you can actually reach out to.
Yes, yes. I think one of the agencies where a doctor is from, and then there's Women's Aid, and then there's the One-Stop Crisis Center. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes, yeah. And then there's the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and the emergency protection order that you can go to Welfare Department and get. And of course, the first stop would be to reach out for help, and someone can help you get that help. Because a lot of women and men, they might not have that ability to actually go out there and get that help.
If you find yourself in a situation like this, or you know somebody, or within your family you feel needs help, these are just a list of certain places you can go. But thank you all very much for joining us today. Thank you to our two guests.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for sharing and your personal stories as well. I think it gives our viewers power listening to what everyone goes through. And the reality is 1 in 3 women have a story, have an experience. And so just to, I think, reinforce, just because I feel so strongly about this, that do not stay in a situation that is harmful, because you hurt, people around you hurt, your children, if you have them, hurt. And it does, we keep saying this, it gets passed on, and the violence is perpetuated, it continues. So immediate action is what really needs to happen, and it really does save lives. So thank you guys for watching, and we hope it's been a helpful show, and please share this with friends.
See you soon.